The orbital fortress groaned like a wounded beast. Hull plates rattled as alien bombardment hammered the station, each impact reverberating through steel and bone alike. Warning klaxons wailed, red light washing across the gun deck. Captain Rylan Holt ignored the chaos, bracing his boots against the deck plating as he fired another burst from his rifle into the breach. The weapon looked small, laughably so, compared to the alien plasma cannons carving holes in the fortress. A stubby kinetic rifle, human-designed centuries ago, nothing more than magnetized rails firing slugs of tungsten. To the galaxy's great empires, it was primitive. To Holt, it was survival. The first alien soldier shoved through the breach, towering over Holt, carapace gleaming under the strobe of emergency lights. Its mandibles clicked in a sneer. Tiny weapon, it hissed, voice thick with contempt. Holt squeezed the trigger. The slug punched through its skull, exploding out the other side in a spray of ichor. The alien collapsed with a thud, armor clattering against steel. Holt shifted targets, firing again and again, each shot tearing through chitin that alien armor should have protected. But the Dominion hadn't learned yet. Human toys punched harder than they looked. Push them back! Holt roared, voice raw but steady. His squad surged forward, weapons blazing. Rail slugs ricocheted off the breach walls, ripping into the second wave of invaders. Sparks lit the smoke-choked air as the aliens faltered, their arrogance crumbling into panic. Lieutenant Brask stumbled beside him, helmet cracked, blood streaking his cheek. "They're laughing at us out there, sir. Think these guns are sticks and stones? Then make them choke on stones." Holt growled, slamming a fresh mag into his rifle. The aliens pressed harder, plasma bolts streaking through the breach, melting bulkheads, scorching men alive. Screams filled the deck, but still the squad held. Holt fired methodically, every shot precise, every movement drilled by decades of combat. Around him, soldiers wielded rifles, shotguns, even jury-rigged pistols, small, simple, devastating. Another alien lunged through the breach, claws raised. Holt met it head-on, jamming his rifle under its chin and firing upward. Bone shattered, ichor sprayed hot across his armor. He kicked the corpse back through the breach. "Next!" The squad roared with him. The aliens hesitated, just long enough for Holt's people to slam barricades into place, sealing the opening with twisted steel and smoldering wreckage. For a heartbeat, silence fell, broken only by ragged breathing and the distant groan of the fortress tearing apart. Holt lowered his rifle, chest heaving. Around him, survivors slumped against walls, their faces pale under soot and blood. Brask spat black phlegm and gave a bitter grin. "They didn't laugh long." "No," Holt said, wiping ichor from his visor. "They won't. Not once word spreads." The respite lasted seconds. "Captain!" Maravay, comms officer, called from her station, voice shaking. "Long-range scans confirm 3 more boarding parties en route. Different sectors." "And?" Her voice trailed. Holt turned, his stomach tightening. "And what?" She hesitated, eyes darting across flickering displays. "The grid went down before they docked. Our defenses didn't even fire." Holt froze. The fortress defense grid was automated, designed to annihilate anything that came close. For 3 separate boarding craft to slip through. Sabotage. His jaw tightened. Betrayal wasn't new. Humanity was fractured, desperate, crawling with factions who would sell each other out for survival. Still, it never got easier. He clicked comms to squad channel. "Lock down this sector. Brask, you're in charge here." "I'm heading for control." Brask frowned. "Alone?" "Sir, you'll be torn apart." Holt's eyes burned under the visor. "Better me than all of us. Hold this line." Without waiting, he strode down the corridor, boots striking steel in rhythm with the pounding of his heart. Smoke curled from ruptured panels, flames licked bulkheads. The fortress was dying, but Holt had lived in dying ships before. He passed wounded soldiers slumped in corners, medics scrambling with dwindling supplies. Eyes followed him, some pleading, some angry, all desperate. Holt didn't break stride. If he faltered, the whole station faltered. At the control nexus, the doors gaped open, locks melted. Holt raised his rifle, sweeping inside. The room reeked of ozone and burning metal. Consoles flickered, defense systems offline. And in the center of the chaos, bent over a console, stood a human. Not an alien. Human. Holt leveled his rifle. Step away from that panel. The man turned slowly. His uniform bore the insignia of the Council Fleet, Earth Loyalists. His face was pale, eyes hollow, hands trembling, but the look in them was defiance, not fear. Captain Holt, the man said quietly. You don't understand. Enlighten me, Holt snapped. Why the grid's down? Why our people are dying? The man swallowed, jaw tightening. Because survival doesn't come from defiance. It comes from surrender. The Dominion offered terms. I accepted. Holt's blood turned cold. You sold out an entire fortress for terms? They would have spared us. The man hissed, voice cracking. Spared billions. All they ask is that we kneel. Better that than extinction. Holt's rifle never wavered. Rage boiled under his skin, but beneath it was grief. The memory of his son, burned alive under alien fire, his screams etched forever in Holt's mind. Kneeling hadn't saved him. You think kneeling saves us? Holt's voice was ice. It only teaches them we're worth less than the dirt they burn. The man's hand twitched toward the console. Holt fired. The traitor collapsed, blood pooling across the deck, eyes frozen in shock. Holt approached the console, scanning the damage. Systems were gutted, grid controls severed. Rebooting them would take hours humanity didn't have. The Dominion would keep coming, wave after wave, until the fortress broke. Mara's voice crackled through comms. Captain, more breaches confirmed. Multiple decks. We're stretched thin. Holt's grip tightened on the rifle. He looked at the fallen traitor, then at the failing systems around him. The fortress was bleeding out. Rally everyone who can hold a weapon, he said, voice hard as steel. Forget the grid. Forget the council. This station holds as long as we breathe. He turned from the console, eyes blazing, as the deck shuddered again under alien fire. Humanity was mocked for its tiny weapons. But Holt knew the truth. Those weapons, in human hands, weren't toys. They were extinction waiting to happen. The corridor lights flickered, plunging him into shadow for a heartbeat before flaring back to red. His reflection stared back in the cracked visor glass, scarred, exhausted, unyielding. He chambered a fresh round. Let's show them how dangerous toys can be. The fortress groaned again, louder this time, as the next wave arrived. The fortress shook again, harder this time, as if the void itself was clawing at its bones. Captain Rylan Holt steadied himself against the bulkhead, rifle slung across his chest, boots crunching over shattered glass and loose wiring. Behind him, the dead traitor lay cooling on the deck. Ahead, the war raged without mercy. The defense grid was lost. The Dominion would not relent. Holt's comm rasped. Captain, Section 12 collapsing! Casualties high, we can't. Static swallowed the voice. He pushed forward, descending through smoke-filled corridors, each step lit by strobes of failing power. His squad regrouped near the elevator bay, armor scorched, faces grim. Lieutenant Brass's visor was cracked even further, blood seeping into his collar. Mara Vey hunched over a portable terminal, fingers flying across failing circuits. Report, Holt barked. 3 decks breach, Mara said, voice strained but steady. Aliens are flooding in, but they're not striking blind. They're heading straight for reactor access. Holt's gut twisted. They want the core. Brask spat blood onto the deck. Sir, with the grid down, we can't funnel them. They'll gut the heart and leave this fortress a tomb. Holt scanned their weary faces. Half his squad was gone, the rest barely standing. Yet the fire in their eyes mirrored his own. Then we don't wait for them. We take the fight to them. Before Brask could answer, the deck beneath their boots shuddered, followed by a roar unlike any they had heard yet. The air pressure shifted, metal warped, and suddenly the bulkhead exploded inward. From the smoke emerged hulking Dominion elites, taller than the soldiers they'd faced earlier, armor layered in obsidian plating. Their weapons crackled with searing plasma, humming with menace. At their center strode an alien commander, mandibles polished with silver engravings, banners etched into his carapace. He pointed a clawed finger at Holt's squad. "Primitive fire throwers!" The alien spat an accented standard. "Surrender, and your deaths may be swift." Holt stepped forward, rifle raised. His voice cut through the smoke. "You mocked our guns. You've seen what they do. Tell me, do you still laugh?" The alien sneered. "We laugh at gnats until the swarm is crushed." Holt fired. The slug tore through the commander's crest, shattering bone and spraying ichor across the elites. The alien collapsed in silence. "Swarm this," Brask muttered, opening fire. The corridor erupted. Rail slugs hammered elite armor, sparks flying with every hit. The Dominion returned fire, plasma bolts carving molten lines through steel. One soldier went down screaming, chest melted open. Another staggered back with his arms sheared away. "Fall back!" Holt ordered, forcing the squad toward cover. Mara shoved her terminal into a satchel and sprinted after them. Brask staggered at Holt's side, firing bursts as he retreated. They ducked into a maintenance shaft, doors slamming shut as plasma bolts scorched the steel. Silence pressed in, broken only by the hiss of Mara's ragged breathing and the muffled boom of battle outside. Brask leaned against the wall, blood streaking his armor. "We're not winning this, sir. We're bleeding out." Holt crouched, checking the mag count on his rifle. "Then we bleed them more." Mara's eyes flicked up, glinting with something beyond exhaustion. "I intercepted data from their boarding comms. They're not just raiding. They're scanning our weapons." Holt frowned. "Scanning?" "Yes." Her voice grew steadier. "Every time we fire, they record it. Every kinetic impact, every slug trajectory, they're collecting data. Studying us." Brask cursed under his breath. "They came to mock us, now they want to dissect us." Holt understood. This wasn't arrogance, it was analysis. The Dominion wanted to know why tiny, human guns kept tearing through their soldiers. If they learned how, humanity would lose its last advantage. "Then we don't give them the data," Holt said. "We make them choke on it." Before he could elaborate, Mara's terminal chimed. An incoming signal. She frowned, patching it through. The screen flickered to life, and Holt's stomach tightened. "Envoy Selric." The council diplomat's face filled the screen, pristine uniform stark against the chaos surrounding Holt's squad. His voice was calm, almost pitying. "Captain Holt," Selric began, "your defiance is admirable, but pointless. The Dominion fleet has offered peace. Lay down arms, and humanity will endure under their protection." Holt's knuckles whitened around his rifle. "Peace? You call betrayal peace?" Selric's expression didn't change. "You cannot win. The Dominion will not stop until every fortress is ash. Humanity survives only by bending." Brask slammed his fist into the wall. "He's feeding them our grid codes, isn't he?" Holt silenced him with a look, eyes locked on Selric. "I buried my son under alien fire, Anvu. You think kneeling would have saved him? You think kneeling saves anyone?" Selric's tone sharpened. "You're blinded by grief, Holt. Humanity doesn't need martyrs, it needs pragmatists. Stand down." The screen flickered out, leaving only static. For a moment, silence reigned. The squad looked to Holt, waiting. He holstered the terminal with steady hands. Selric chose chains. "We choose fire." Brask managed a grim smile. "That's why we follow you, sir." Before Holt could answer, the maintenance shaft shuddered. The elites were cutting through. Sparks rained as molten lines carved into the bulkhead. "Commander," Mara whispered, "if they break through, we're finished." Holt scanned the shaft. Exposed conduits, loose piping, coolant lines, a death trap waiting to be triggered. He felt the weight of his choice settle like lead in his chest. "Then we make this our line," he said. "Rig everything. If they want us, they'll drown in fire. The squad moved with grim efficiency, planting charges, rerouting conduits, turning the shaft into a furnace. Sweat dripped under helmets, hands shook from exhaustion, but the work was done. The bulkhead groaned, a claw punching through. The elites roared, ready to finish the swarm. Holt raised his rifle, voice steady. We didn't ask for this war. But we'll finish it on our terms. The charges detonated. Flame and shrapnel ripped through the shaft, engulfing the Dominion elites in a storm of fire and steel. Screams echoed, then silence. The corridor was nothing but ash and molten wreckage. Holt lowered his weapon, chest heaving. Around him, his squad stared at the carnage with a mixture of awe and horror. Mara broke the silence. Captain, we can't hold like this forever. No, Holt admitted, his voice a low growl. But we don't need forever. We just need them to remember. The fortress groaned again, fire lighting the distance as more boarding pods slammed into its hull. Holt chambered a fresh round, his eyes burning with defiance. Rally every survivor. We're not done yet. The Dominion thought humans carried toys. By the time this fortress fell, they would understand. Those toys were weapons of extinction. The fortress was burning from the inside out. Smoke curled through every corridor, lights failing in stuttering bursts. The Dominion's assault had turned relentless, boarding pods crashing into the hull like iron meteors, disgorging wave after wave of armored soldiers. Captain Rylan Holt sprinted through the chaos with what remained of his squad, rifle tight against his chest. His ears still rang from the shaft detonation that had saved them minutes earlier. Every survivor carried fresh burns, bruises, or blood-soaked bandages. Yet none of them slowed. Mara's voice cut through calms. Captain, Dominion troops have breached the reactor deck. If they take control, the core's theirs. Holt's gut clenched. The core wasn't just power, it was leverage. In Dominion hands, it could become a beacon of surrender or a weapon of mass destruction. He increased his pace. They emerged into the central spine, a cavernous chamber stretching the length of the fortress. Catwalks crisscrossed above pits of machinery, coolant vapor hissing like breath from a wounded giant. The air shimmered with heat. From the far end, alien forces poured in, obsidian-armored elites driving terrified human defenders backward. Plasma blasts seared through the haze, carving molten scars into steel. Holt raised his rifle, firing bursts that cut down 2 soldiers instantly. His squad followed suit, rail slugs streaking into the enemy line. The aliens faltered for a heartbeat. Then the tide shifted. The wall split open under a thunderous blast, and from the breach stepped Warlord Karath. Even among the Dominion, he towered above all others. His carapace was etched with runes of conquest, mandibles scarred from centuries of war. A plasma glaive hummed in his grasp, radiating heat that scorched the deck beneath his claws. His voice boomed across the chamber, amplified through alien calms. Human insects! You gnash with toys, yet think yourselves predators. I will show you order. Holt's squad froze under the weight of that presence. Fear crept into their eyes. Holt steadied himself, heart hammering, and stepped forward. You'll find out what toys can do, he said, voice carrying clear and sharp. Karath advanced, Dominion soldiers rallying around him. The clash erupted with ferocity. Railguns thundered. Plasma screamed. The air filled with the crack of kinetic slugs smashing against alien armor, sparks and ichor spraying in all directions. Mara crouched behind cover, jamming an override into a console to lock the reactor deck doors. Brask fought at Holt's side, firing one-handed, his other arm still bound in bloody bandages. Karath cut a swath through defenders, his glaive splitting men in 2, each strike leaving molten arcs in the steel floor. He moved with brutal elegance, every motion a reminder of the gulf between Dominion strength and human flesh. Holt fired directly at the warlord. The slug struck Karath's chest and ricocheted, sparks flying. The alien barely flinched. Primitive! Karath snarled, leaping forward. Holt dove aside as the glaive crashed down, slicing through a steel support beam like paper. Sparks rained. Holt rolled, raised his rifle, and fired into Karatha's exposed side. The slug struck joint plating, cracking it open. Black ichor sprayed, sizzling against the deck. Karath roared, staggering but not falling. You wound inevitability? You cannot comprehend what you face. Holt rose to his feet, grim smile flickering despite the pain in his chest. I comprehend just fine. You bleed. The battle raged. Brask hurled a grenade into a cluster of elites, the explosion painting the chamber with fire. Mara screamed updates over comms. More pods inbound. We're outnumbered 10-1. Holt barked back. Then we make every shot count. Karath lunged again, glaive slashing in a deadly arc. Holt parried with his rifle, sparks exploding as the weapon's frame bent under the impact. The alien's strength nearly broke him, but Holt shoved back, jamming his knife into the exposed joint he'd cracked earlier. The blade sank deep. Karath howled, flinging Holt across the chamber. He slammed into a console, pain exploding through his ribs. His rifle clattered to the floor, ruined. Through blurred vision, Holt saw the warlord bearing down, ichor dripping, glaive glowing white-hot. Around them, humans fought desperately, rail slugs turning the air into a storm of sparks. Still the Dominion pressed closer. Mara's voice cut through the chaos. Captain, reactor override detected. They're trying to flood the core. If the Dominion triggered a meltdown, the fortress would tear itself apart, and humanity's defiance would die in silence. Holt forced himself up, chest screaming in protest. He staggered toward Karath, who towered over him with Predator's certainty. You cannot win, the warlord growled. Your kind cannot even survive its own pride. Holt spat blood, eyes burning with iron resolve. Pride didn't build these guns. Rage did. He lunged, slamming the knife deeper into Karatha's joint. The alien roared, glaive swinging wide. Holt ducked under the arc, seized a fallen rifle, and fired point-blank into the wound. The slug tore through flesh and armor alike, spraying ichor across both of them. Karath staggered, wounded but unbroken. His mandibles curled in fury. You are a plague, human! And plagues are burned away. Before Holt could strike again, Dominion reinforcements surged into the chamber. Plasma lit the room, defenders falling one by one. Brask was dragged down by 3 elites, torn apart before Holt's eyes. Mara screamed as her console exploded, shrapnel slicing across her face. Holt fired until his rifle clicked empty, then swung it like a club, smashing an alien's jaw. Blood and sparks painted the chamber, the fortress groaning as its systems failed. Karath rose through the chaos, his glaive raised high. Your defiance ends here. Holt raised his ruined rifle, ready for one final strike, when the floor beneath them quaked. The reactor pulsed, its energy surging wild. The Dominion's tampering had destabilized it. Warning sirens screamed as coolant vapor burst in violent plumes. The chambers shook violently, flames erupting from ruptured conduits. Mara's broken voice crackled through comms. Captain, the core's unstable. Minutes, maybe less. Holt's eyes locked on Karath. Both knew what it meant. If the core blew, either side would survive. But only one side would be remembered. Holt wiped blood from his eyes, voice raw but steady. We don't kneel, Karath. Not to you. Not to anyone. He lunged, knife raised, even as the chamber erupted around them. The fortress screamed like a dying star. The reactor chamber convulsed, conduits bursting in white-hot arcs, molten metal spilling across the deck. Sirens blared warnings in every language, a chorus of doom echoing through the collapsing station. Captain Rylan Holt stood bloodied and unbroken, knife slick with black ichor. Across from him, Warlord Karath loomed, wounded but not defeated, plasma glaive still burning in his claws. Both men knew there would be no retreat. The reactor core pulsed brighter, each surge bending gravity, pulling loose debris into orbit around its containment sphere. Mara's broken voice crackled through Holt's comms. Captain, core will breach in 2 minutes. Holt spat blood, glaring at the warlord. Then I'll make sure you die with it. Karatha's mandibles curled in a sneer. Even at the edge of annihilation, you cling to defiance. Pathetic. Holt stepped forward, boots sinking into molten slag. His voice was raw, steady. Not pathetic. Human. The two clashed with a final roar. Karath swung his glaive in a blazing arc. Holt dodged, knife slashing across the alien's side, opening ichor that hissed against the floor. The warlord struck back, blade grazing Holt's armor, searing into his ribs. Pain flared white-hot, but Holt pressed closer, stabbing again and again, driving the knife into every weakness he could find. Bleed! Holt growled, voice like iron. Karath backhanded him, the impact sending Holt crashing into a console. Sparks exploded around him. His chest burned, lungs barely filling. He coughed blood, but he rose again, knife trembling in his grip. The warlord advanced, each step rattling the deck. You are finished, human. This fortress, your species, all reduced to ash. And I will stand over your grave as proof that chaos bows to order. Holt's vision blurred, but his will sharpened. He remembered his son's face, remembered the screams of a city burned by alien fire, remembered the traitor's hollow eyes. The galaxy wanted humanity to kneel. He would leave them a lesson carved in fire. He staggered forward, closing the distance. Then remember this, order bleeds. With the last of his strength, Holt jammed the knife into the warlord's throat. Black ichor sprayed in a boiling fountain. Karath roared, staggering back, glaive clattering to the deck. The warlord's mandible snapped in fury and pain, but his legs buckled. The chamber shook violently as the reactor's containment shattered further. Mara's voice screamed through comms. Captain, 30 seconds! Holt stumbled toward the core, leaving Karath writhing in ichor. He ripped the charge pack from his armor, priming every last explosive he carried. The magnetic locks hissed as he slapped them onto the exposed conduits. The explosives beeped in unison, synced to his biometric trigger. Brask's voice haunted him, echoing in memory, "We're not winning this, sir. We're bleeding out." Holt whispered into his calm, "Mara, get whoever's left to the escape pods. That's an order. Captain, don't. That's an order." Silence. Then a choked, "Yes, sir." Holt turned back to Karath. The warlord was rising again, impossibly, ichor pouring from his throat wound. His eyes burned with fury that eclipsed pain. "You cannot kill inevitability." Holt's chest heaved. "I don't need to. I just need to remind you what humans do when you laugh at us." He slammed his bloodied hand onto the detonator. The charges ignited. The chamber exploded in a storm of fire and collapsing steel. The reactor core screamed as its energy surged uncontrolled, tearing through every deck of the fortress. The blast consumed Karath, consumed Holt, consumed everything. From orbit, the fortress flared like a second sun, fire washing across the void. Dominion ships staggered under the shockwave, shields buckling, fleets thrown into chaos. For a heartbeat, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Then silence. On the escape pod, Mara clutched her torn helmet, staring at the inferno where the fortress had been. Around her, wounded soldiers wept quietly, some in rage, some in awe. Her voice cracked, but she spoke aloud, as if Holt could still hear. "He did it. He turned their mockery into fire. They'll never forget." Across Dominion channels, the story spread like wildfire. Humans, with their tiny guns and primitive explosives, had obliterated an entire warlord's fleet with nothing but defiance and steel. The galaxy whispered in shock, maybe the primitives were not so primitive after all. But the story wasn't finished. Deep within the shattered husk of the fortress, buried under molten wreckage, a shadow stirred. Warlord Karath, scarred beyond recognition, clawed his way from the debris. His throat was torn, mandibles shattered, one arm twisted beyond repair. Yet his eyes still burned with unquenchable fury. He staggered, leaving a trail of ichor, and activated a beacon. His voice, broken but resolute, carried across the Dominion fleet. "The human plague thinks it won. Let the galaxy know, Karath endures. And I will burn their species to ash." The beacon pulsed through the void, a vow of vengeance that would echo in every Dominion Council chamber. Mara didn't know it yet, But humanity's defiance had birthed something greater than survival. They had forged a myth. Rylan Holt's sacrifice would spread like fire across fractured human colonies, uniting them in rage and pride. And somewhere in the dark, Karatha's vow promised a war that would scar galaxies. For now, though, Mara sat in silence, the escape pod drifting through the stars, her reflection flickering in the viewport. She whispered into the void. "You didn't just fight, Captain. You showed them why they'll never break us." The stars burn on, indifferent, but humanity's legend had been written, in blood, fire, and the laugh of a soldier who never bowed. Ending twist. Holt dies in the explosion, securing a symbolic victory, but Karath survives, scarred and vengeful. Humanity wins a battle but ignites a war.